Have you ever felt like you're on a financial treadmill? You're working harder, you might even get a pay raise, but it feels like your grocery bill and your rent are just pulling further and further ahead. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden reason why it so often feels like you're falling behind, no matter how fast you run. So, to really get what's going on, let's start with a little story. I want you to picture yourself high up, way up in the nosebleed seats at the biggest game of the year. The place is just buzzing with energy, right? And then, all of a sudden, this announcement comes over the speakers. A blimp appears overhead, and get this, it's about to shower the entire crowd with $10 million in cash. Your heart starts pounding. I mean, this could be your lucky day. But hang on a second. You start to notice something. The blimp isn't hovering over everybody. It's positioned directly above the VIP luxury boxes. Where the billionaires, the big shot tycoons, and all the insiders are sitting. They barely have to move. They just open their windows and start raking in these huge stacks of cash. And what's the very first thing they do? They rush to the private merchandise shops and fancy concession stands, and they buy up everything in sight. And here's the key. They're buying it all at the old prices, before anyone else has even seen a single dollar. Meanwhile, way, way up in your seat, a few crumpled bills finally start to drift down. You get lucky. You manage to snag a crisp $100 bill. So you rush down to get that hot dog you've been wanting, but you get a massive shock. The vendors, they completely sold out to all the VIPs. So now they have to restock, but at much higher costs. So what do? They've tripled their prices. That $5 hot dog is now $15. That brand new $100 bill in your hand buys you way less than it would have just minutes ago. You didn't actually get richer. Your purchasing power just got totally diluted. So does this game feel just a little bit rigged? Because, this isn't just some made-up story. It's actually a perfect metaphor for the mechanical reality of our modern economy. And this invisible force, it has a name. So let's get into it. This whole rigged game scenario isn't just an analogy. It's a real economic principle, and it's known as the Cantillon Effect. Okay, so here's the absolute crucial point to understand. New money is not neutral. When it gets created, it doesn't spread evenly through the economy like butter on toast. The Cantillon Effect basically says that where the money enters the system determines everything. The first people to get their hands on it win big, while the last people to get it, well, they lose. And believe it or not, this is not a new idea. It was first figured out way back in the 18th century by an Irish-French banker named Richard Cantillon. See, he noticed that when new gold was flooding into Europe from the Americas, the people closest to the king, the bankers, the merchants, they got fabulously wealthy. But the farmers and the laborers, the folks at the end of the line, they just got crushed by higher prices for things like bread and rent. It turns out being close to the money printer has always been the key. Okay, so that was the 18th century. How in the world does this apply to our digital world of central banks and instant money printing today? Well, the players have changed, but the game is exactly the same. The king, or the blimp from our story, that's now the central bank, like the Federal Reserve. The new gold isn't physical anymore. It's digital credit, often created through something called quantitative easing. And those courtiers in the VIP box? Yep, they're the massive commercial banks and financial institutions of today. And here's exactly how it works step by step. First, the central bank literally creates trillions of dollars with a few keystrokes. But that money doesn't go to you or me. Step 2, they inject it into the financial system by buying bonds from large banks. This means, in step 3, those banks and big corporations get first access to all this new money at nearly 0% interest. So what do? Step 4, of course, they go on a massive buying spree, snapping up assets like stocks and real estate before any of the prices can adjust. And then, finally, in step 5, that money eventually trickles down to the rest of us through wages, but only after the cost of everything has already skyrocketed. So this creates this huge divide in the economy. You've got the early receivers, banks, corporations, people who already own a lot of assets. They get to use this new money to buy things at old prices, which just makes them wealthier. And then you have the late receivers, and that's most of us. Wage earners, people trying to save, retirees on a fixed income. We get the devalued money last, and we have to buy everything at new, inflated prices. Our purchasing power gets systematically destroyed. Okay, let's bring all this economic theory back home. Back to you, and back to that feeling of running on a treadmill, just trying to stay in the same place. And look, the data backs this up in a pretty shocking way. As you can see right here, since 1979, worker productivity has just soared. I mean, we are creating more value per hour worked than ever before. But then, look at the other bar. Real wages, that's what our paychecks can actually buy, they've barely budged. So the billion-dollar question is, where did that massive gap in value go? Well, that enormous gap, it's not just corporate greed, although that can be part of it. It is the structural result of the Cantillon Effect. You can think of it as a hidden tax, silently siphoning the value created by your hard work away from you and into the assets owned by the people who get the new money first. So you might be thinking, is this situation totally hopeless? Should we just give up? Absolutely not. Just understanding the rules of the game is the first and most powerful step you can take to changing how you play it. See, the goal isn't to try and stop the system, because, let's be honest, you can't. The real goal is to reposition yourself within it. You have to move out of the splash zone of inflation and get yourself a little closer to the source of that waterfall. So what can you actually do? The whole point is to stop trying to save your way to wealth in a currency that's being systematically devalued. You have to start acting more like the early receivers. Here are 3 big strategies. First, become an owner, not just an earner. Put your capital into scarce assets that tend to float on top of inflation. Second, think about using fixed-rate debt strategically. This lets you buy assets today and then pay back that loan with future money that's worth less. And third, increase your income's velocity. That means developing in-demand skills, or maybe even owning a business, so you have the power to raise your prices when your costs go up. So here we are, back in the stadium. The rules of this economic game are now crystal clear. The money flows from the top, it inflates asset prices first, and consumer prices last. So the real question is, are you going to stay up in the nosebleeds waiting for that diluted money while prices just keep rising, or are you going to find a way to get a little closer to the field? You have the blueprint now. The choice of where you sit is ultimately yours.